we will not put money over integrity. Also because in the long term, this wouldn't pay. And I mean, this is I deeply believe.
Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm Marco Fontani, Forensic Director at Amped Software. Today we're here to discuss about something that it's everywhere right now, deepfakes. And more specifically, we want to talk about something that gets often oversimplified in the public discussion. Because when people hear deepfakes, they immediately tend to think about a tool which gives you a score, a yes or no answer, red or green light. But in the real world, and especially in the forensic world, it's not that simple.
Hi, I'm Martino Jerian, CEO and founder of Amped Software. Hopefully, I'm the real one. You can see, no occlusion. Today, in fact, as Marco introduced, we will speak about deepfake forensics. Not just deepfake detection. Deepfake forensics is much more. We will see together what's the difference and why we need a kind of holistic approach. Now, holistic is a very inflationated word, but I think describes very well what we are going to discuss.
And that's the key point of today's episode. We are not here to talk about magic buttons or one-click tools that will give you a yes or no. We are here to talk about forensic methodology. What does a proper forensic analysis look like? What can detectors do well and where do they fall short? And what are the signals we want to be there to reach a reliable conclusion about a forensic deepfake analysis?
Yeah, in fact, because if you want to have just a punchy headline, a score, a real and fake, maybe enough sometimes. But if we speak about an investigation or a forensic process, then we need a bit or much more.
So in this episode, we'll explore what deepfake forensic really means, why the language around detection can sometimes be misleading, and why the future of this field depends not just on smarter models, but on stronger forensic thinking.
Let's get into it.
Let's go. So, I will start with the first question for you, Martino. You said deepfake forensics is much more than deepfake detection. Mm-hmm. What's the most important distinction between these two concepts for people to understand?
Yeah, let's say that deepfake detection is what is very popular nowadays, okay? You have countless tools, commercial, online, free, sketchy ones that pretend to do something and install malware through your browser. And essentially, they try to give an easy answer to a complex question. That is the problem, okay? So essentially, deepfake detection, the basic idea, I'm sure you're familiar about, is you upload an image, a video, a piece of audio, even text for some, and they say, it's AI generated or it's real. And the problem is that even the question is complicated because there can be different nuances of that. So deepfake forensics is a much more thorough approach that includes also deepfake detection, but also much more. And essentially, I would describe it as the process dedicated to detecting, analyzing, and understanding synthetic media, so images, videos, and audio, that have been manipulated or entirely generated with AI.
Okay, thank you. Why do you think the industry became so obsessed with deepfake detection when the real forensic question is much more than that, much broader?
I think I like to quote, I think it was a quote by a guy called H.L. Mencken, which was an American journalist and satirist. And he said, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And I think that summarize. I mean, it's much easier. I mean, you and I, we teach. I did in the past. You think you still teach authenticate training from time to time?
When needed.
Yeah, and we know how complicated is even conceptually, before talking about software, just conceptually the various concepts, integrity, authenticity, and stuff like that. So giving to the public a tool that say real or fake is much easier, but it's wrong. That's a problem.
Okay, great. So you make a strong point that a deepfake is still just an image, video, or audio file. And how does that simple idea change the way an analyst should approach its job?
Yeah, essentially, this means that we have tons of tools that were working before deepfake were a thing on images and videos. And in fact, if we talk about Amped Authenticate, our tool, it's been out since 2013, where nobody was thinking about AI for image generation. So we have new challenges, huge challenges, but good old tools for analyzing format, file structure, compression still work on AI-generated images and videos. So old tools and new tools together.
Okay, thank you. I'd like now to address one important point. Can you please clarify the distinction between a confidence score and a probability, and how confusing these two concepts can be dangerous?
Yeah, I think confidence is a major issue for any kind of AI. Confidence, I mean, we can make an example, okay? I'm sure we all have a friend who always knows everything. And when he doesn't know something, he makes things up. But the problem is that he believes in what he said. He's not lying to you because he's lying to himself. I think we all have this friend. I mean, I can be sure that the earth is flat. I'm sorry, flat earthers friends, but it's not. Okay, I can be sure. So I can be confident about something and still be wrong. And this is normally the score that we get with AI. And the problem with AI, not only for images, for text, we see all the time, these are what hallucinations are called in even textual AI like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and stuff like that. They are so convincing even when they are wrong. And changing on a bit sideways on the image side, this is the problem also with AI-based enhancement that may enhance faces, license plate, anything, creating a very realistic but, let's say, not reliable detail. And so what we see, usually these numbers are the confidence, how much the network classify, for example, a fake or a real image, think they are right, not what's the probability of them being right. Probability would need to be tested, let's say, empirically and say, okay, out of 10 images, one of these will be classified in the wrong way. I'm super simplifying here, but the concept is this. And this would be a real probability within some constraint, where the confidence tells me very little. Sometimes the confidence could, under testing, as we did in our dplay tool, we can see that the confidence correlates well with probability, but this needs to be tested. It is not always true.
Thank you. So we do have a deepfake detection tool, several actually in Authenticate, our product. But whoever follows you on your LinkedIn profile, on the blog, they've seen multiple times you being very clear that these are not silver bullets. So the question would be, why did you feel the need to say this so clearly when we know that the market rewards simplicity, let's say?
Yeah, because this is in our, let's say, company principles and foundations. I mean, you know, our tagline has been for ages, justice through science. And I mean, we try to simplify things, but not to oversimplify them. And the users trust us for this, and they need to be confident when they go to court testifying that they use our tools. So also the public can trust them. We don't want to put them at risk. So we try to be transparent, backed by science, honest, and not oversell what we do. We say when things work. We say clearly when things don't work, what are the risks and what are the advantages. And of course, as every company, we have to get money, but we will not put money over integrity. Also because in the long term, this wouldn't pay. And this is I deeply believe. So I know other companies have different approaches. I don't think. Even when we say something that is correct, it's not maybe commercially convenient, because saying, yes, our tool always work, trust our deepfake detection, everything will ever work. And then people realize, yes, but in this case it doesn't work. It's not a good long-term strategy, especially for someone who works in a field so sensitive like ours.
Okay, thank you. Now, recently, a major media tested several deepfake detection tools found online, and they published the results with the images and the results of the tools, which were not always exciting, I would say, and you didn't resist the temptation to run the images in Authenticate, which actually got it all right.
Yeah.
And so you published this, but then immediately after you warned not to trust it too much, right? So how do you reconcile these two messages without sounding contradictory?
Yeah, in this case, it was somewhat easy because we had the ground truth. So we got an output and all the results were matching the ground truth because we knew which images were real and fake. In a real case, we don't have this advantage. We get a result and even if we have a tool that is detecting deepfakes with 99% accuracy, we still have 1%, which nobody has. For deepfakes in the wild, nobody has a classifier that works 99% of the times. So it's optimistic. So we still have, in this case, 1% of images that are or videos that are classified in the wrong way. So we don't know when this 1% will happen. And this is the challenge. If you are working on something that can impact the freedom of someone or the security, it's very critical. And also, another problem is that I can't go to court and say, yes, this is a deepfake because an AI told me so. We need to have other methods to back more deterministically this claim. And sometimes, often, I think we find other ways to cross-verify this. Other times, there can be a false positives or a misdetection, and we can discover it through other means.
Okay, so there are voices in the industry which says that since we have this inherent uncertainty on the correctness of results, everyone should just drop the idea of developing a good deepfake detector. So if I asked you, should we drop the deepfake detection, what would you answer?
Absolutely not. It's a very useful tool. It's useful for triage because often the reality is that there is a volume of data quickly classifying and checking what is worth a deeper investigation. It's very important, but also I don't say let's dismiss entirely deepfake detection. Let's not use it alone. We can get an initial result that we can validate or compute with other tools. And of course, another thing to keep into account is the bias that this detection can give to us because we are humans. So we need to be careful in understanding also when this tool works and they don't. But definitely it's a very important tool, especially as the amount of, let's say, AI-generated material grows. So let's keep working on that.
Okay. You've linked the deepfake forensics to explainability, reproducibility, and legal defensibility. What does an analysis need to have before you'd feel comfortable seeing it tested in court?
I think we are circling back to deepfake forensics is the idea of analyzing the media from different point of views, all the angles that we can take. So yes, deepfake detection, but contextual analysis, structural analysis, metadata, statistics of pixels, the geometric analysis, shadows, perspective, reflection. So only if we look an image or a video from all these aspects, we can be sure we didn't miss or overlook some details. And also we need to have an intersection between having the right data, because let's remember, I always need to work on the best evidence available to me. Sometimes I only have a screenshot, which is not great, but sometimes is the reality. Otherwise, if possible, I need to get the more original, if possible, data. But we also need to have the right tools, the right skills, and the right workflow. If I have a tool like Authenticate, but I don't have the training, I didn't have the experience to work with it, it can be misleading. The same thing, I can be an expert, but not having the right tool or working on the wrong file can be also difficult. So we need to have everything and accept that very rarely the answer will be it's real or it's fake, but most of the times will be something in between.
Okay. I have a last question for you about the future. Looking ahead, what worries you more? That generators will get better, or that people will keep thinking and believe that there's one magic tool that solves everything with a button?
I think both, but also a wider problem that I think is even worse, and the impact that these things are having and will have even more on people. On one hand, we have people believing what they see without verifying. But on the other, we have the opposite problem, which is called the liar's dividend. And these people so used to see deepfakes and AI-generated media everywhere that they don't believe in even real images, and that's equally, if not more dangerous. There is a third factor. Several studies shown that even when we know that something is a fake, it still have an impact on us. And I mean, it's pretty logical. We've been always looking movies, and even if we know that people is acting, we are still moved, and maybe we cry, and even it's fake. They are acting, okay? Ultimately, I think for kind of general application stuff we see on social media and around, people will have, or maybe is already treating media, images, videos, audio, as text, okay? It's been since ages since always, that people can write what they want. So, of course, I don't evaluate the content of a text much for what it's written, but the channel. So if something is written or said by some people I trust, I believe it. If it's written by a media or a person that I don't trust, then I can reject it. So I think it will become something like that for images and videos as well, if it's not already. Of course, this is for the general application, but for criminal cases, that is what we are normally working on with our tools. This doesn't work. So for those cases, you need to use technical analysis like those with Authenticate. And one last point that I wrote a short post on LinkedIn yesterday, and I think it's very interesting, is, and it's really mind-blowing, it's having fake forensic analysis been exploited for propaganda. So we've seen in the Iran war, fake deep death maps use as kind of fake evidence that something was fake when it isn't, and it's something, kind of, like Inception, using a deepfake, an image forensics tool, a fake output from image forensic tool to prove something, which is
tricky.
Yeah, interesting times.
Thank you, Martino.
So now it's my turn to
counter-interrogate
you.
I'll be on the grill now. Let's
go.
go.
Okay, Marco. Before anyone even talks about a detector output, what, in your opinion, does a real deepfake forensics workflow look like?
I think that's an interesting point. If you look at the guidelines published by relevant authorities like the Scientific Working Group on Digital Evidence or the European Network of Forensic Science Institutes, they both agree on a very important point, that whenever you have to deal with image authentication or video authentication, you will not need one tool, one algorithm. You will need a thorough approach that combines together many different perspectives, let's say. And so you would start from looking at the image and possibly highlighting things that are suspicious, although nowadays it gets more difficult for images especially, but you can still find issues with text and visual inconsistencies. You would then check the file container, the metadata, because maybe it still brings some traces of being generated if it's not being cleaned in some way, which is very easy to do, by the way. And then you will look at the statistical level, possible traces left, perhaps in the frequency domain or in the physical domain. So there could be inconsistencies in shadows, perspective, reflections if they're there. Of course, you have to be careful that the image satisfies the hypothesis to do this kind of analysis. There are some details to be checked. But once you put all of this together, hopefully you will have multiple elements supporting your doubts about the image. Sometimes there will be a clear indication that it's an AI-generated images. Sometimes, probably more often, there will be just an indicator that you cannot or you should not trust the image, regardless of its origin. But still, it's something you can defend much more sensibly than just trusting a detector output.
Okay. So, when looking at some images or video, what are the first signs that tell you this needs deeper forensic work, deeper analysis, even before AI detection enters the discussion?
Well, that's a very challenging question. I think it depends on what you've been asked to do. So what is the purpose of the analysis? And on the file you've been given. So of course, if you're given a file that looks like a camera original, you can do some kind of analysis. If your file name suggests it comes from WhatsApp, and maybe tools will suggest also that it's compressed in a way that is compatible with WhatsApp, probably it's from WhatsApp. And so that means it's being laundered implicitly, unwillingly maybe, but it's being recompressed, maybe downscaled. So you already know that a lot of things you would like to check are no longer there. The container, it's the WhatsApp container. The metadata are gone. Compression. And so that means you will have to scratch your head and look for something different, okay? While if I'm given an image that really looks a camera original, either the forger has been very smart, which of course is an option, or maybe we are indeed dealing with a camera original, so we'll look for reference material, compare them side by side, and start building my case in a completely different way. Yeah.
So you remember a couple of weeks ago, we've been together to a course, and I did a very quick speech about deepfakes. And it was a course where other people from various companies in kind of executive positions and managers, but not for tech companies we're participating in. So I wanted to have a small presentation speech about the deepfakes and explain something behind them. And to my surprise, nobody knew what deepfakes were. It was like, I mean, for me it was very eye-opening, because working in this field, I mean, day and night I expect everybody to know what deepfakes are. So we talk a bit about how we can generate these deepfakes. In general, I mean, for layman people, how people generate deepfakes and images with AI nowadays, and how they can create a credible one and not just a very fake-looking ones.
Okay, so creating a credible deepfake, unfortunately, is pretty easy. Not necessarily unfortunately, because you can create these kind of images for perfectly legit purposes, come on. But yes, all you need is a subscription or even a free login to one service online. I will not make any names now, but I guess you know most of them. And they will just allow you to drop a few words. You no longer need to say, make it photorealistic. Quite often they will do it anyway, because they enhance your prompt with AI.
Yeah, actually the problem is that they give a too perfect image, and actually I remember at a certain point they improve the results, making worse images because they are more similar to what people makes with the smartphones and stuff like that.
They start introducing some blur. Yes, true. So even online tools, free or slightly paid, can give you very good results. Of course, what they will not do for you is create images that are illegal, okay? Or sometimes they will be quite denying images that contain celebrity faces. They will refuse to say, I will put a president face on someone else's body or stuff like that. If you want to go down that route, which unfortunately is the case for many offenders, you can download offline models that are completely unfiltered, and you don't need for images very special hardware, to be honest. An average gaming PC with a fairly decent GPU can already generate impressive results, and you have million hours on YouTube about how to do that.
Yeah. So once we generated these images, how do we analyze them? Because I talked before about the concept of multi-layered analysis with deep forensics. So which layers do you want to converge before actually trusting a conclusion?
Well, the more the better, of course. One important element to consider is that the detector we mentioned beforehand, the online detectors, are online detectors, which means your image will go online. And this is already a major point here. So depending on what you're dealing with, you really don't want it to go online. You really don't want it to exit your computer, because this could bring consequences for you. That is why Authenticate works offline, okay? Can work fully offline, because you can be sure that you're not sending that content around. And in my ideal case, I would like to find traces of an image being generated by a deepfake generator, at least, if not in the image metadata, because that would be really, maybe too easy. But
unless someone faked it.
Unless someone faked it, of course. But I would be quite happy, of course, if the detector flags it, although it's not a conclusive answer, but we know our detector is pretty good, so that would be at least a good starting point. And then I would be happy to find traces at the geometrical level, because I think geometrical analysis is very powerful and very robust. So even if the image is being printed and scanned, for example, which is considered probably the most powerful counter-forensic attack for a digital image, well, if the shadows are wrong, they stay wrong. If the perspective is wrong, it stays wrong. And here I want to clarify one point, because I guess most people will be thinking, actually, shadows are not that bad in deepfake images. Perspective looks perfectly fine. Yes, I totally agree. I'm not saying that shadows are wrong in the sense that you can spot it by the naked eye. The technical analysis you can do can detect anomalies that are completely invisible to the eye. Okay, and this is where it still works. We published a paper. Now it was 1 year and a half ago. Okay, where we showed that for common commercial tools available, reflections, shadows were wrong, and then we introduced also perspective analysis because it's even harder to get it right across several vanishing points.
But they are probably improving on this end.
Obviously they are. I think they're not explicitly optimizing this though, because since it's already very good for the naked eye, I don't see the need for them to force geometry constraints, which is probably something not very easy to do, by the way, into the generators. So maybe they are improving it as a side effect. But yes, there is a risk, of course. So that's why we keep doing experiments, and we'll probably publish more in the future, also considering videos.
Okay, so I think one big difference, we spoke about mostly about images so far. So can we use the same techniques that we use on images, extracting, analyzing individual frames from video? Does it work? Sometimes, never, always?
Good question. And yes, we get asked this in support quite often, by the way, so I will take this opportunity to clarify. The general answer is no. No, actually, jokes aside, yes, you can use some of the methods that you can use in images on video frames, but you have to think about it, okay? So I've seen people asking, if I exported a video frame from the video and then I load it in Authenticate, for example, should I check the metadata, the file container? The answer is no, obviously, because that file is being created from scratch the moment you save it from the video. So it's completely pointless to check its metadata and container. It's a new file that you generate on the computer. And if you do that, you are in for troubles, because if you find an expert on the other side, that will be an easy win for him to show that you're not very competent. Okay, so you have to be careful with that. There are other kind of analysis that can work. For example, the geometrical analysis we mentioned before, it completely holds for video frames as well. Actually, we encourage people to do that. I remember me doing in first person when Google Veo 3 was released. On the promotional video, I quickly found a shadow that was completely wrong, although you couldn't see it by the naked eye. So, geometrical analysis for sure. Noise-based analysis, you can give it a try. Of course, you know that videos are usually more compressed than images, so there will be different kind of outputs. But yes, there are some things you can use and some that you cannot.
So you mentioned already geometrical filters that are very effective on AI-generated media or any kind of images, because they are they are very robust to any kind of signal manipulation or editing processing. What other tools, in addition to the detection and geometrical analysis, you think are especially useful to work with synthetic images and videos?
One thing I've seen is that people sometimes create a partial deepfake image, let's say, by taking a real image, then generating some faces with a diffusion model or a generative that's a network, and then they will plug the content into the original image. Okay, when they do that, methods that have been invented well before deepfakes were a thing, like JPEG compression analysis, they can be extremely useful, because in this kind of analysis, what you're looking for is the inconsistency between the untouched part of the image and the manipulated part, without any assumption on how the manipulation was made. So I have had cases where this worked out very well, even with very small manipulations, because these tools are very fine-grained, and they are completely explainable. I mean, explainable to someone who understands math, okay, but still explainable. And yes, they can be powerful. They are less effective if you're dealing with entirely synthetically generated images. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So before you asked me about confidence and probability, what is, often we have to go to court. Our users, we've been personally in the past, but we think about our users mainly. A big challenge when going to court is explaining in layman terms complex topics without oversimplifying them, because then the other side can attack you of saying something which is not formally correct. So complex topics like confidence, probability should be made understandable, but correct. Also, the risk is that people get impacted by them, they misunderstand them, and they get the wrong conclusion. So, what's a possible mistake that no specialist can make when they hear, for example, a model says 85% confidence or 100% confidence? What are the risks of using these numbers?
The main risk is that you can confuse the layman or the judge by saying that a 90% confidence is a probability. Probability is a very clear concept, okay? And you should be very careful. We have a very good webinar on our YouTube channel about that, where we warn users about using the word probability. So the most awful mistake, egregious mistake I can think of is confusing these two concepts and go to court with this. Because the confidence that a detector, an AI system will give you, maybe it can be considered technically a probability in the mathematical sense of the neural network, okay? But it's nothing near to the concept of the probability of the image being actually fake or not, of an object being a knife or not. You should interpret the output of these networks as a measure of how much the network is confident based on its training data, the model, on the output. Okay? If you want to assess the probability, as you mentioned before, you can do an experiment. So you can have a controlled data set and you can measure how often, so this is an empirical probability, okay, how often the system will make a mistake. But even if you have this and you have a system that in your dataset always did right, so you still cannot say that 100% it will perform rightly on an unknown image because maybe it's not well represented by your test set. So yeah, I think that's the most important thing to distinguish.
Okay, and so more in general, when you are under scrutiny, how would you turn your technical observation? And we know, especially for image authentication, are very complex sometimes. Some plots also, some filters in Authenticate are very easy to use, but need a lot of experience to be interpreted. Like looking at X-rays. I assume it's easy to do X-rays or echographies, but then reading them, that's the real challenge. So how can you make something explainable, reproducible, and understandable to a jury, to a court, to the judge, to non-technical people?
Well, what I try to do, even in the training, actually, yes, we can give the mathematical explanation behind it, but that is probably too much in some contexts. But you can give the general idea. So you have to explain how things work without going into details that are not necessary to understand how they work. So for example, let me just give you an example with double JPEG compression analysis, okay? So if you want to explain how the aligned double JPEG compression filter works, you can either start talking about quantization and so on and so forth, double quantization effect, which is perfectly fine, but could be confusing and people could get lost. Okay? Or you could say, look, a JPEG image is split in 8x8 blocks. Okay, so when you manipulate just one part of a JPEG images, then you save to JPEG again. Those blocks that you didn't touch will undergo the original compression because the image starts as a JPEG, and the additional compression when you've finished working in Photoshop or whatever program. The blocks that you've manipulated instead, because of the manipulation, they lose the traces of the previous compression, and they only feel the last compression step. So if you can create a statistical model which tells apart these two components in the image, you can create a map which gives you the probability mathematical probability, of blocks being belonging to one or the other component. As you can see, I didn't use much of the math here, but the idea is perfectly fine. Okay, so this is the way I would probably explain some of the conclusions that I have. The more you understand how things work inside, the more it's easy for you to create this kind of descriptive analysis without being oversimplifying it or being wrong.
Okay, so for analysts and investigators listening to this episode, what mindset shift do you want to leave them with?
It's a job for experts, basically. So I'm not trying to say don't try, okay? I'm trying to say that you need the proper tool, you need the proper training. We can always be wrong because we have to accept that. So you will never be ready and infallible, okay? But you have to be aware of the complexity of it. So if you feel it's easy, it means you're probably far from the reality, okay? So you need to learn more. We have mentioned many kinds of analysis today. They're still not enough, okay? So we can do more. We can think of new techniques. We try to do that all the time. We do research. And so if we that work on this since years feel that we're still not completely there, I hope this goes to the mind of the analyst as well, okay? Okay, so that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can also check the AMPET blog and subscribe to our free video forensic library for behind-the-scenes updates from AMPET and practical insights from the world of video forensics. And if you rather get the key updates only, you can subscribe to our bi-monthly newsletter when we round up the most relevant events going on and updates from the last 2 months. Thanks for being with us, and if you have questions, you can contact us.
Ciao!
Bye-bye!